John Hook's Newsmaker starts now.
Thanks for joining us on Newsmaker. Gambling, especially online gaming, has exploded in Arizona, but is there a social downside? We're going to speak to someone who discovered the dark side of gaming later in the program. But we begin with Arizona's Superintendent of Public Instruction, the man who heads up Arizona's schools. That's 1.1 million students in publicly funded schools. That includes charters, public schools. Tom Horne, my guest on Newsmaker. Good to see you.
It's great to be with you, John.
We've got so much to talk about, but I want to focus right now on this English-only business. You are a big proponent of teaching English only in the schools. Why?
Well, we don't call it English only, we call it structured English immersion. There are two reasons. One is it's the law, and the second is it's the data clearly shows it's the best for the students. With respect to the law, in the year 2000, the voters overwhelmingly passed an initiative that said that students learning English are to learn English by being taught in English, and they're to be in English language classrooms. The language could not be more clear. And no one can overrule a voter-passed initiative, not the governor, not the legislature, not the state board, not me, not the attorney general or the governor. The voters, when the voters pass an initiative, that prevails over everything. The second reason is the data. When I took office the first time in 2003, my two predecessors had not enforced the initiative. I was the first to do it. So when I took office, we had bilingual education, and the rate of students becoming proficient in English in 1 year was a pathetic 4%. At that rate, almost no students would ever become proficient, and they would fail in the economy. We introduced structured English immersion. We got it up to 31%. That's becoming proficient in 1 year. At that rate, in 3 or 4 years, almost everyone becomes proficient. So that data was really overwhelming as to what's the best for the students. And then we also have recent data showing that comparing apples with apples, the English immersion schools do better by about 4 to 1 versus dual language schools. So people who care about the students' academic performance are in favor of structured English immersion. The only reason to be for dual language is a matter of ideology, not caring about the academic success of the students.
I've got to clear this up because people may think you're on a publicly funded junket to Hawaii with the waves crashing behind you. This is just a screen thing, right?
Yeah, that's my standard screen for Zoom.
I know. I don't want people to be distracted. Okay.
Right.
So.
Well, that'll relax them.
Yes. Okay. So you've had the courts weighing in on this. You filed a lawsuit, attempted to see that dual language would be declared illegal, but it failed, and a judge found you lacked authority. So now you're appealing that decision, correct?
Yes, that's right. The judge never reached the substance that I was talking about as to what the initiative requires or what's in the interest of the students. But some years ago, the legislature passed a law as to what departments could sue and be sued. And this was between times when I was in office. I was not in office. I wasn't there to lobby for the Department of Education. And the legislation named departments but not the Department of Education. So she held. Now, I thought I had an implied right to sue because the legislature gave me a lot of duties to oversee the teaching of English to English language learners.
Now, do you think there's a problem with having this was a quirky thing? Your wife is the one challenging and filing the appeal. I know she's a lawyer and she did some time in education. I know that, but do you open yourself up for criticism when your wife is lead counsel on this thing?
No, on the contrary. First of all, she's not doing the appeal. Dennis Willenchek, who's the lawyer for the department, is doing the appeal. She's filed a separate lawsuit because the initiative provides that any parent of a student in an Arizona school can sue any district to enforce the initiative. And so then it makes it clear that there's a right to sue by the parent. My wife is a perfect lawyer for that because she came to the United States from Cuba at the age of 8, not speaking a word of English, was immersed for 3 months and became proficient in 3 months and was very successful both academically and then in the legal profession.
So you don't see a conflict there?
It's the opposite of a conflict. We're in agreement.
Okay.
The conflict is when people have separate interests. We're totally in agreement. And the plaintiff in the case is married to a husband who came from China and had the same experience. He was immersed in English and did very well.
This is a woman from the Creighton
both
School
the lawyer
District.
and the plaintiff believe very strongly that students should have the right to learn English properly, and then once they know English, they can go and succeed academically in the regular classroom.
Superintendent Horne, just an overarching question here.
Yes.
You believe in local control, right? You're a strong believer in local control.
Well, local control where it's appropriate. So, for example, the state sets standards, and then the local districts do curriculum as a way of reaching those standards, and then we do testing, and if the students pass the tests, then we leave the schools alone. If they don't pass the tests, meaning they didn't learn the standards, that's when we become involved. So there's a division between local districts and the Department of Education, but where it's appropriate, I'm a very strong proponent of local control. I was on a school board for 24 years, 10 years.
Right, and you believe in parents having choices in education.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
does this push to say one size fits all, English immersion only, not dual language?
Right.
Does that fly in the face of parental choice?
Well, it's the law. You can't violate the law. Just as the law says that the state sets standards, not districts. So there's no local control on the setting of standards. There is local control on the curriculum to reach those standards. But the law is that on setting standards, that's a responsibility of the State Department of Education. Similarly here, the law says that all students who learn English shall be taught English by being taught in English and shall be in English language classrooms. So the wording is very clear. So the people that have been encouraging districts to violate the law, the governor, the attorney general, they're promoting lawlessness because they're promoting some people violating the law and trying to get away with it on a technicality such as whether I could bring a lawsuit.
You're talking about now Proposition 203. That's what we're talking about here. And
Yes.
the Attorney General, Chris Mays, says the state board, not the superintendent, has the final say over English language learning models, and that the state board says dual language is acceptable.
State board does not have the right to overrule a voter-passed initiative. The Attorney General doesn't have a right to overrule a voter-passed initiative. The voters prevail when they have spoken through a voter-passed initiative, and this passed overwhelmingly.
So your feeling is then, you are convinced that the best way to get a kid to achieve in America is immerse them in English right from the get-go, get them proficient in English, and the dual language thing you think can hold them back.
That's absolutely right, John. And it's not just a matter of what I think. The data clearly shows it.
Okay, let's talk about ESAs. This is the other big issue that you guys are dealing with, the education empowerment scholarships. Okay, the ESA issue has come under fire because people are saying, well, the money's being wasted and that maybe even our budget deficit in Arizona, which is pushing about $1 billion, is caused by spending on ESAs. What do you say?
It's not. The people in the governor's office who did that calculation failed to account for the offsetting cost that would be incurred in the public school if the student was not an ESA. They just took the gross value, the gross cost of ESAs, and they failed to look at the fact that in ESAs we pay the family $74,000, but the cost in public school is $13,000 per student. So there's a savings if the student is in ESA that we would otherwise be spending in the public school. And this is proven by the fact that the entire education budget, that is public schools, charter schools, which are public schools, and ESAs, are under budget. There's actually a surplus in that part of the budget. So whatever's causing the deficit, it has absolutely nothing to do with education or with the essays.
This is still a small segment. I mean, it's growing. It's about 83,000 at the last figure that I saw out of a student population of 1.1 million in Arizona. So it's not a big number, but it seems that this has become so politicized. Democrats seem certain that Republicans are out to gut public schools and privatize education. What would you say to them?
Well, I'm very much a public school person. I went to public school myself and did well. My 4 children went to public schools and did well. 90% of my time and effort and that of the department are spent helping schools, public schools, do better academically. So that's silly as far as I'm concerned. The benefit of the essays is that if a student's needs, let me just say this, most people want their kid to go to the neighborhood school. That's shown by the fact that it's actually 1,250,000 students in public schools and 70-something, it changes all the time, students in ESA. So the overwhelming number are still in public schools. Parents want their kids to go to the neighborhood school. But if the needs of a child are not being met, they should have the right to find a school where the needs will be met. That's something that rich people have always had, and we think people of all economic levels should have. We have families where they have 3 kids, 2 of them are doing fine in public school, but one of them, his needs is not being met, and so they have a choice to put him in a school where his needs are met. To oppose that, I think, is heartlessness in the service of ideology.
The Attorney General, as you know, held a press conference a few weeks ago talking about fraud in the ESAs and a bunch of money squandered and swindled. Actually, of the 5 people who have been indicted, I believe, on this, 3 of them were working inside the Department of Education to create fake kids, fake accounts, fake Social Security numbers to bilk the ESA program. That strikes me as not a parent overspending on useless stuff. It strikes me as an inside job. Yes.
First of all, let me say I have zero tolerance for fraud. I was the Arizona Attorney General. The employees that you're talking about were hired by my predecessor and they were fired by me. When I took office, I was anxious to avoid fraud, so I hired an auditor who had something like 15 years experience in the Auditor General's office and an investigator specifically to make sure fraud did not occur. And of all the cases that the Attorney General has, all but one of them were found by us. And the one that was not found by us was found by a credit union. So the Attorney General didn't find any. And
So
those employees that I fired, I hope they go to jail.
Okay.
Because that was pure fraud. But what this really is, John, is an attack on parental choice. And she doesn't want parents to be able to send a child to another school if the child's needs aren't being met. I find hard to understand how anybody could feel that a child has to be kept in a school where his needs are not being met.
One
other
of the
big
points
point is that I think competition is good for everybody, and the public schools do better if they have competition than if they're a government monopoly.
One of the points you made when you rebutted all this that I thought was really interesting was that we're focusing on fraud within the ESA program. But you were saying we've got fraud in the traditional public schools as well. I mean, we had it in Scottsdale, phony bids on contracts, no bid contracts. It was nonsense. We've seen a lot of this stuff in the traditional public schools, and that shouldn't get a pass either.
No, I agree with you. And actually, if your viewers go on the website of the Auditor General, they'll see all the frauds that have been in public schools. One of them was about, I think, over 3 million, and ours was in the hundreds of thousands. But I have tolerance for zero fraud. I brought in an auditor and an investigator. I fired the people that my predecessor hired that were involved in the fraud. We have discovered all but one of the cases that are at the Attorney General's office and sent them to her. There are a lot more that she hasn't done anything on. We've sent her an additional 7 cases, mostly involving forged birth certificates. So I have zero tolerance for fraud, and we're determined to have zero fraud. What you're talking about are things that happened with employees that were carryovers for the previous administration that I fired, and as I say, I hope they go to prison.
Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horne, I appreciate you coming on the program, and we will see you soon. And don't soak up too much sun in Hawaii.
Thank you, John, and it's great to be on your program. You always give me the time to explain things, and so I admire your program very much, and I appreciate it, and I'm always available to you, even on short notice, whenever you want me.
I appreciate that. Superintendent of Public Instruction Tom Horne, thank you.